Yo, what up?
Hey, what's up, man?
Nothing.
Yeah, same. Fucking nothing. Ah, well, DoorDash. DoorDash for the first time in a while. That was awesome.
Dude, there's something truly masochistic about you, John.
What do you
Like
mean?
deep down, like the dark represses of your fucking brain is a fucking creature that loves inflicting pain on itself.
God damn, Craig. You might be right about
Dude,
that, but I don't know if it has anything to do with DoorDash.
dude, if I door dashed, it would be just to throw somebody's fucking food on the ground in front of them, stomp on it. There's no fucking way, dude.
Yeah.
Go get your own
Yeah.
fucking food, bitch.
My car is like squealing down the road, like every time it hits a bump. It's like, fuck, dude. The door is like all fucking stuck. Like it's not stuck. It just like clanks when you open it. It's like crank. I'm like, shit. Fucking car.
Dude, I remember I worked for this bookstore for a little while. And we'd buy people's collections whenever they were moving or something. It was an easy way to get rid of your library instead of like hauling all the books across the state or whatever. You just call us and we come pick them up.
Yeah.
And I remember I worked like fucking like 8 hours doing this shit, and I got paid maybe $50, maybe $60 or something. And I had to drive all the way to Northlake to get to like just to start the job because that's where it is the book exchange.
All right.
And
Ginger worked there too, right?
yep. And then I was telling the strippers about it the next day, and Nick's like, motherfucker, if they'd have tried that shit with me, I'd have just thrown the books out the window and been like, all right, where's my fucking money? Where's my $50?
What?
And at the time I was like, what a fucking egotistical piece of shit. But dude, as you get older, man, I don't know.
Yeah, you have less bandwidth for stupid shit like that. I mean, this is the first time with DoorDash in a while, to be honest, because I've been picking up more hours. I'm gonna be full time, soon enough. And you get it. We talked about this before, but you just pick and choose the time. I don't really eat dinner at this time, so fuck it. I went out 2 hours, made some money.
I mean, I get that, but I don't know. I guess I got all that shit out of my system by now.
Well,
Um,
yeah, man. If you do it enough, it sucks. It really sucks. For a while there, I was doing it like every day, and yeah, I was just like fucking hating it because it's not like consistent. If it was consistently good, you know, that's one thing. But if it's like you're grinding at all, it's fucking. You just feel like you feel every mile you drive, just like you start getting angry driving around. Like you start thinking of crazy shit. Like if this fucking customer says one damn thing wrong, I'm gonna snap.
yeah, dude.
I'm
I don't
gonna
know.
throw that food at the door. I'm not even gonna bring it to him. I mean, I always bring the food, but I don't know.
I wonder how many
Dude,
times.
today somebody
You know,
was like, I went to McDonald's. I got their chicken nuggets, and they're like, I didn't even see the text until after I was like walking up to the door. They're like, hey, if it's not too late, could you make sure they're extra crispy? I'm like, sir, madam, fuck you. What do you think? I'm making the goddamn things?
I didn't even know McDonald's had extra crispy. Like, what the fuck are you
I
talking
know.
about?
They're always extra crispy. You ever get nuggets there? Burn to a crisp every time. What the fuck? What are they
Yeah,
talking about?
it's not fucking KFC, bitch. I don't know.
It's not even really food. It's just like who knows where
Yeah,
the chicken nugget splurge comes from that they make chicken nuggets out of. But I guarantee you there's barely any chicken in that. Tastes delicious
like
though.
chicken product, man. I don't know, dude. I got all that shit out of my system by now. I don't know if I could do it anymore. Like, I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have the 2 jobs that I do have because, like, and I'm fed up with FAU too. I'm not even doing FAU anymore after this semester. Fuck
Oh,
that.
they're infuriating, man. The way they dick people are the adjuncts, I should say, dick adjuncts around sucks. Sorry, it really sucks.
Adjuncts, visiting instructors, grad students. You just got a fat dick right up the ass, dude.
Right.
Sucks.
I remember feeling angsty even back when I started grad school. I'm like, they're fucking making a killing off of us. I was doing a math of what tuition was and how many students are in each class. I'm like,
Yeah,
don't do that. Don't start doing math. You're an English professor. You'll
I
get
mean
paid shit and like it.
that's the thing is, it's obvious that we're carrying the bulk of their salaries, you know,
Oh
and
yeah.
we're getting a like not even just a bad end or not even just a shit end, but totally and completely unfair fucking um deal out of it. And they're making $9,000 a fucking year, dude. Like,
Oh my god.
and
Yeah.
living in Boca Raton, which is the most expensive place like in America, or one of the most expensive places in America. Ben Shapiro lives in fucking Boca Raton. You know,
Oh,
like
it's
that's
good.
how
Oh
that,
yeah, he does.
that's how fucking bougie it is.
I would have considered going to FIU back in the day if they're offering like 10 grand a year to live in Miami, and I'd basically have to just commute there. I guess living at my parents' house if I did that. It's like fuck that. But luckily Tallahassee's like was really cheap to live in. My apartment was like $500 a month back then, but
Dude, I'm just
yeah.
so glad it's all over. I wonder what I'd do if I had to go back to school. I think I'd just become a nurse or something. Um,
You never
everything we
think
do
about getting
from
a PhD
fuck
in
no.
fucking writing? That would be so painful. I don't understand the people that went for a PhD, man. That's a you talk about masochistic. That's crazy. An insane
Dude, I
proposition.
can't stand the idea of anyone telling me that they know more about literature than I do. Like that concept alone is just never going to fucking fly. Here's the thing, like it would fly if I respected the teacher. You know, if I like genuinely had this awe, like fucking respect for them. But
Like as a writer or something, or
or even as a professor, I had this professor named Thomas Martin at FAU, and it was just like I sat in his class and I listened to him, and I was like, this guy knows more about lit theory than I will ever know for the rest of my life. This guy has sat down and read, all of the Derrida, all the Saussure, and all of the Hegel, and all the whatever the fuck, all the
right,
Jung, all the Freud. He's read all of it, and all the fucking Karl Marx, and all the communist fucking manifestos, and he's read all this shit and he's understood it, and it's just like, dude, I couldn't do it. I could not, even if even if I spent the rest of my life trying to understand this stuff, I would never understand it to the level that this guy does. And if he were if I was going to take he retired, but if I was going to take a PhD with anybody, it would just be with him. I would just take his classes, and I would try to come to some deeper understanding of lit theory, which, by the way, already just sounds terrible. It sounds miserable. Even if I did respect him, the process just sounds like fucking shit.
yeah, yeah,
'Cause it's not the literature that I'm interested in. The literature that I'm interested in is the stuff that we're talking about today. The
the
good
debauchery,
poetry.
the yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It's pretty fucking out there, man. You chose
let's start
you, you
this.
chose some fucking doozies, dude.
Yeah, show some
You, you,
duty.
you got a poem about kids, like the lore behind fucking sheep,
Yep.
I'm guessing this is like in Alabama or like in the South back in the day or some shit. You got black art, which is, I mean, it goes without saying, it's just vile. Child
Yeah.
beater, vile. It's vile.
Yeah.
Vile poems. I guess they're all vile. That's the theme right there.
Yeah. They're the dregs of humanity. They're the dregs of our own soul. You have the thing started, the podcast?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Just the worst of the worst, but it's also beautiful, and it's also captivating and genuine and human on these like subconscious levels, and we can start with anyone that you want. I mean, I love all three of them. All three of them open up really fast. Um, they open up getting right to the heart of the matter. Poems are bullshit unless they are teeth trees or lemons piled on a step. I don't know what lemons piled on a step means. Um,
Yeah, Craig, you're getting your PhD now. Analyze that shit. All
what, do,
right.
what do lemons piled on a step means? It's like,
How are you going to
um,
justify the anti-Semitism in this poem? God damn it!
is there something about Jews and piling lemons on a on a step? I've never heard of that.
I don't know. Oh no. The other parts of the poem are. It's like
Lemons on
basically.
a step. Yeah,
It's
I've never.
kind of. Yeah.
The
I
first
don't.
thing that comes up is Amari Baraka, Black Art. um, uh, maybe it's a critique of that thing Billy Collins wrote about how you are the lights, you are the candelabra, you know you
Well,
are the lemons piled on the step.
take it as an ars poetica. It's basic to me. It's like saying that poems are bullshit unless they're something concrete that you can see. Like also he's probably describing an image maybe that he's seen. From where he's from, maybe.
Harlem, right?
Harlem, maybe. I
Unless
don't
they're
know why there would be lemons on a step, but like that's
yeah,
definitely like a very concrete image, at least. Like poems are
they're
bullshit unless they're real. There's something you can see and kind of taste.
teeth or trees or lemons piled on a step. Fuck poems.
And they are useful.
Would they were useful if they shoot come at you? You know. Which, by the way, I had this teacher once try to teach us to us, and she definitely put a pause between unless they shoot, come at you. I'm like, nah, bitch. It's fucking
we
shoot, come at you, all right? Like a fucking big cock. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. Yeah, he definitely he meant what he wrote. It's a fucking poem for crying out loud. How do you teach this in a class? Who taught this poem to you?
She only taught half of it. It's this teacher. She taught African American literature. I forget her name. But she was really big on African American lit. She only taught the first half, and it's funny because I'd just given somebody else in that class the poem in its entirety. It's just like, man, dude, you really bastardize this fucking poem when you only give like the first half of it. Before it gets into all the airplane going and all that shit.
Yeah. Why would you do that?
I don't know. I don't know what her
It's,
deal was.
Man, I was reading this poem today, like just out loud to myself, and I was like, man, it's so fucking good. Like the language itself is just pop. It's really rhythmic, I love lines like "fuck poems" and they are useful. It's like fuck poems. That blind break is so big, and it like kind of flips it upside down, and he's kind of doing that constantly. The come at you line is also kind of like surprising. You could read it two different ways, I guess. Some people choose to read it the way that doesn't involve jizz, but love what you. I mean, what a weird like just string of like clauses. Like, would they shoot? Come at you. Love what you are. Breathe like
Breathe
wrestlers or
like
shudder
wrestlers or
stranger.
shudder
Strange.
strangely after peeing.
Like, what a
Yeah.
weird, like, just string of fucking words he put together there, and it's just so fucking kinetic and, like, you know, that's how you want to write sometimes, like, you just want to fucking, like, scream. I mean,
The poem is a scream. The poem is somebody screaming into the fucking void of the universe and just hating so much of life, but also surprisingly tender every once in a while, So we skipped a line. Poems are bullshit unless there are teeth or trees or lemons piled on a step, or black ladies dying of men leaving nickel hearts beating them down. Like it's a feminist poem. On top of everything, it's a poem that's concerned about how women are treated in this world. Uh, but it's also just so savage, man. By the way, it is so much lit theory, encompassed into one poem.
yeah, what do you mean by that?
It's about it's about communism, it's about fascism, it's about feminism, it's about racial justice, it's about I gotta kick this dog out of this room. It's about social consciousness, uh, but it's also anti-Semitic, and it's racist towards blacks, and it's homophobic, and it's racist towards Italians. It's racist towards Irish. Uh, but it's also just beautiful, you know. And it's all just from this really savage place inside of Amari Baraka, who, by the way, was somebody who would go out there and, during the riots and fuck shit up and get himself fucked up during it. Um, Kind of like the Terry
Fucking
Crews
psycho.
of Harlem. As a way to look at him, I guess.
I wonder how old he was when he wrote this.
Um,
I've been young, right?
that's a good question. When was Black Art published?
This shit was published? No fucking way.
We're
I
talking
feel,
about a different America.
I feel like he just read it one night, or it like became popular. He's just reading it all the time, and somebody fucking transcribed it. That's how it reads, and it's kind of how the syntax looks on the page too, because it just like fucking is all over the place. I mean, just
Uh,
literally like uh, airplane sounds and gun sounds in the poem. Like,
it was published in 1966, and Google says, or Wikipedia, which this poem, by the way, has a Wikipedia page. Says it sparked the Black arts movement in poetry. Um,
so it is kind of like an ars poetica. It's like, this is how we're gonna write poems until shit, gets better. There's that line that kind of say, like you said, it was beautiful, or like you're hinting at there's some beauty in it. Clean out the world of virtue and love. Let there be no love poems written until love can exist freely and cleanly. So it's like giving reason why the poem's so vicious. Like, we're not writing love poems here. We're writing like fuck you poems, fuck everybody except for me and my people, basically, until shit gets better.
yeah. Um, I mean, all great poems are kind of an ars poetica in a way, but this one most definitely um, is definitely that. It's also a manifesto on top of being everything else. It's a manifesto of of poetry and of political movements. Um, it's also
Yeah.
just a lot of fun. It's just a fun poem to read. It's something taboo about it. There's something. Uh,
I mean, it's silly.
yeah,
Assassin poems that shoot guns,
yeah.
poems
Let's
that
see.
wrestle
We
cops
want
into
we
alleys
want
and take
live
their
world.
weapons.
We want live words of the hip world. Live flesh and coursing blood, hearts, brains, souls, splintering fire. Talk about syntax. I mean, at this point, it's like his brain is skipping. you know, like 10 beats between every word. That's how fast he's going. It almost feels like he's sprinting in his own brain. Um, we want poems like fists beating niggers out of jocks or dagger poems in the slimy bellies of owner Jews. Black poems to smear on girdle mama mulatto bitches whose brains are red jelly stuck between Elizabeth Taylor's toes, stinking whores. We want poems that kill, assassin poems, poems that shoot guns, poems that wrestle cops in the alleys and take their weapons, leaving them dead with tongues pulled out and sent to Ireland. Knockoff poems for dope selling wops or slick half white politicians. Airplane poems. You know, it's just like, dude, he was
Setting
poem that
fire and
takes no
death to Whitey's
prisoners, man.
ass.
Yeah, the poem takes no fucking prisoners, dude.
There's nobody, yes.
Look at the liberal spokesman for the Jews clutch his throat and puke himself into eternity. There's a Negro
Grrr.
There's a Negro leader pinned to a bar in Sardis, eyeballs melting in hot flame. Another Negro leader on the steps of the White House, one kneeling coolly between the sheriff's thighs. I'm sorry, one on the steps of the White House, one kneeling between the sheriff's thighs, negotiating coolly for his
Ugh,
people.
Jesus.
It's just like somewhere down the line, he really did finally stumble across his own subconscious. I mean, I think that's what I like about all three of these poems. They're very surreal in a way. It's like the writers in writing them were able to meditate and to arrive at this place in their brain that they'd hidden from themselves and
Yeah.
finally expose it. You know, and so things don't necessarily make logical sense, but they don't have to because they make sense on some other level. And they're poems that you never forget. They're poems that they haunt you. They're poems that make you want to write and want to understand what this great writing thing is. And they're probably, by the way, um, to the poet, the best that the poet was ever able to do. Amari Baraka was never able to touch anything close to this, as far as I can tell, uh, for the rest of his days. But what a fucking height, what a ceiling to arrive at. I wish he'd been able
Yeah.
to. I wish he'd been able to write 100 more. He'd have been an excellent young Lee. But
Wow, I wouldn't say Leon Lee. It would just let him be a Mary Baraka, all right? I can imagine like Leon Lee writing something like this, but it's interesting. I'm
in a way he
trying.
does, though. In a way he does. It's just his heart is purer than Amari Baraka's is. But
Right. Yeah, it's just as visceral as like Leon Lee's best stuff. They're just talking about different shit, Like Leon Lee's worried about, his dead father haunting him, like he's like, am I doing the right thing? Am I happy, And
right.
Amiri Baraka is just like, fuck this shit. Fuck everything. Fuck my situation. Fuck you. This is like and he was able to like render that anger so honestly, like sincerely, because he doesn't hold anything back, and it shouldn't hold anything back. If you really felt that way, it should be just as ugly as his poem came out. Luckily, I think what makes it work though is just how like awesome the energy is in it. It's kind of what we've been talking. I mean, you could hear it when you're reading it. The words just kind of bounce off each other and line to line, and it's just like you said, it's fun. It's kind of fun because it's kind of so grotesque too. That kind of makes it fun. And yeah, I think we all wish we could write a poem like this sometimes. I know I do. I wish I wrote like this all the time, man. I mean, the one I didn't even come close. I honestly, I had when I first like encountered this poem, and I was just when I was angry myself at like my program. I remember I was like halfway through the semester or something, and it was just like, the workshops, man, sometimes they're just so cordial, so nice, and everybody's like oh yeah, this is it's just I love this poem. I have no idea what you just said, but I love it. It's just like all this fakes, niceness and bullshit basically. And there were some like good, poems here and there, like, but man, it was just grinding my gears. And I'd like, I in that workshop I put one of my favorite poems I ever wrote, Wedgwood Way, up in there. And it's like, I know we probably talked about this ad nauseum, but like I put that poem in there and I'm like, all right, here we go. Let's see what happens. And it just was like, this weird like silence, and when I finished reading it, like, and I was just like, fuck, man, I guess I missed the mark here on this poem, my favorite fucking poem. And I was just like devastated by that. I mean, I got some like good feedback or whatever, but it's not really what you want when you read a poem. You want people to like respond in any sort of way, but instead everybody's like, kind of keeping their feelings close to the vest. And and like a few weeks later, I was just like had enough of it, and I was just like had this poem in my head. I think I had just read it. It wasn't the first time I had read it before, but it was, it's a poem I guess you go back to when you're just feeling like fuck the world. I was reading this shit, and I was just having a fucking one of those mental, those fucking breakdowns basically at a Starbucks trying to write poetry, and I'm like writing this, something for the workshop, and I'm like, and it sucks, and I'm like, what am I doing? I throw it away, and I just start fucking writing the most vile shit I could possibly think of in the moment, and I'm just like fucking thinking of like how much I hate the workshop and like how much I hate everything at the school, and like how it's not what writing's about, blah blah blah. And I don't even whatever, but and then I'm like, fuck it, I'm bringing this shit to the workshop.
And they loved it.
And they fucking loved it, man. I read that, and after I read that poem, it was just like I was getting a fucking round of applause, and I'm like, you realize this is about you, right? And I'm like, well, I guess it's also kind of about me too, because I'm, sometimes I could be, trying to kowtow to what people want, and like, and that's when that's when anybody who's writing poems or, doing art or whatever fails. Is when they start trying to like please, their critics and,
Yep.
and people who, at a workshop, or just, they're not even your critics. They're just like a crowd, an audience that you don't even know. And so why the fuck are you going to attempt to please them? Just please yourself. And that was the point of the poem that I wrote in response to black art. And yeah, man, like I wish I could write like that all the times in a way, but in another way, like I don't know if I want to be that angry and sad either to want to write like that. I guess what you really want is like the energy of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hell of a catch-22 to be able to write like that. You also have to live like that. And I mean, you've seen pictures of Amiri Baraka after the riots, like, shit beaten out of him, face busted up. It's,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd want to live like that either. Same goes for James Dickey, actually.
Oh, is he hardcore?
I never told you this. So Susan Mitchell received an award from James Dickey when she was a teenager. I
I
guess
think
she
you
was
have.
in, and he's like, I was really impressed with your poem. I really enjoyed it. She's like, oh, that means the world coming from you. You're one of my idols. And he's like, yeah, I wanted to ask you, have you ever been brutally beaten? And she's like, no. Well, I just wanted to tell you, if you wanted to, I could make that happen.
What the
Yeah.
fuck?
Um.
And she never called him her favorite poet again.
Yeah.
Jesus. All right. So he's like, Who is this guy, Craig, who writes the sheep child? How could somebody
Yeah.
say that and write something? I mean, this is vile too, but it's written so well.
Um, how could somebody say that and also write that? How could I mean, how could somebody write this and not say that is the better question, I think. To to be able to do this, you have to be that guy. And that's really this like I don't think that's true for I don't think that she beat her kids or anything, but um that's also why it feels so over the top, I think also. It doesn't feel like it comes from this really genuine place. And that's why the last image of the poem is kind of like is a metaphor rather than the actual image itself. Is I don't think she was capable of delivering that image as it stands. But when you look at how bizarre, I mean, these two poems maybe they're not as dark as the Child Beater in a way, but
Mhm.
a lot more bizarre than the Child Beater. I feel like these two poems are a lot just way more weird. They're just weirder poems from weirder people. As weird. I don't. As weird as I was, I don't think she's half as weird as James Dickey or Amari Baraka. The Sheep Child, man. So let's talk about this poem because when I first sent this to you, I remember it was you and
I don't
Caitlin, and I think it was somebody else didn't like it. Um, Maybe it was Olivia Wachowski or something, but it was a really like a Rorschach test for me because um, Leo liked it, Laura liked it, and Natalia liked it at the time. And it was interesting talking to you guys about it. Tell me what changed during this reading
I
for
don't
you.
remember. I just remember. I don't really remember reading it the first time, to be honest with you. So I don't really remember what my critique was. Um, it's probably because it's not like a super. It's not really personal. I was really into personal shit back in the day.
Right.
It's kind of like a weird. Now, what do I describe it as? I mean, it's a narrative poem, kind of, but it's like a very lyrical poem too.
Yes.
But what I like about it now is how like no, I don't I want to use the wrong word here, but the language in it is like the storytelling and the way it's written is just so like voluptuous. Like it's just so like smooth. It's so good, man. The writing of it, and I just think I was probably just not like I was not trying to fuck with it back in the day for whatever reason because um maybe I thought it was too impenetrable or whatever. I don't know. It's not really that hard to fucking read. I guess the first time I read it recently, I read it a few times leading up to this podcast. It's been like a few weeks. Um, like yeah, the first time I read it, I was like, "What the fuck is going on in this?" And then the second time, everything clicked. I was like, "Oh, got it." um, but what I appreciate about it now, though, is that turn in the middle. It's like, it's like a two-parter, right? Like, and
Right.
what really makes it special is when he goes into the perspective of the sheep boy and
Right.
and like just shows the scene of him being born, like, and he has like one moment of life and he dies and you just see all that, and it's just way it's written is beautiful and horrifying. And even like it gives that image of his mom as just an animal, but it like describing. I don't know, man. It's just really good. I'm not gonna say like it's my favorite fucking poem in the world, Like it's still kind of you come away from it feeling a little dirty, and grossed out by it. And kind of like, what the fuck did I just read, and why was this written, you know? And I kind of understand why it was written now a little bit more than maybe back in the day. And
Well, let's talk about that. Why do you think it was written?
it's kind of like it's a cultural piece. He's like shedding light on the people he grew up with, like the people he knew. Although it's not like personal at all. It's not like, oh, these are the people I knew and blah blah blah. It's like, no, people like this exist where I'm from. And I guess that's about as personal as it gets. And even that's kind of a stretch, I guess. I was going to ask you that. Why do you think it was written, though?
Well, I can see that. That's definitely part of it. It's definitely about being from the South. But I think equally it's also about being a freak and feeling like a freak, which I think is how uh, James Dickey felt a lot of his life. I think he felt like the sheep child. I think he felt like um, somebody that uh, was ostracized from society, and he felt ugly, and he felt like he was from a place where all he saw was the worst of humanity. I mean, fucked up shit happens in the South, you know.
Right. Yeah, and this kind of like it's like a folklore kind of poem, It's like giving a piece of the folklore a little bit.
I
Like,
love
yeah,
how it's
we would fuck sheep if not for the sheep boy, and not for this one tale of the sheep boy that was born half man, half sheep. It's
farm
so
boy
fucking weird.
wild to couple with anything, with soft-wooded trees, with mounds of earth, mounds of pine straw, will keep themselves off animals by legends of their own. In the hay tunnel dark and dung barns, they will say, I have heard tell that in a museum in Atlanta, way back in the corner somewhere, there's this thing that's only half sheep, like a woolly baby pickled in alcohol. Because those things can't live, his eyes are open, but you can't stand to look. I heard from somebody who. But this is now almost all gone. The boys have taken their own true wives in the city. The sheep are safe in the West Hill pasture. But we who were born there still are not sure, are we? Because we remember in the terrible dust of museums, merely with his eyes, the sheep child may be saying,
So written such a
oh,
weird way. It's like starts trailing off. It goes into dialogue, then it goes into this like persona after the part that you just read,
yep.
and
And
it's
then after that, it's just all the sheep child, and you
there's
know,
no there's no fucking wasted move like word in this, and it's you could do that. Like I think you when you're starting out you kind of think about that a lot. Like, oh, I gotta cut like extraneous words and make my shit direct, and the less syllables the better, whatever. I don't know, whatever the fuck stupid shit goes through your head. But that's all enacted in this, and it's effortless. There's like no, it just it flows. Like I said, the lines are like the movement is voluptuous. I don't even know what the fuck that means, but that's how it feels when you read it.
it is. It's voluptuous. It's every move feels perfect. It feels like it was.
Yeah,
It almost feels like it was written by E. Cummings. How
yeah.
perfect everything feels. The Volta, the turn, is out of this fucking goddamn world, man.
Dude, this is a good poem to like show somebody who's like kind of writing. I don't know. You ever like read a poem and it's like it doesn't really go anywhere, and you're like it should have did something. Just give them this poem. Be like, you can do whatever the fuck you want. In the middle of the poem, you could just start writing from the perspective of this weird sheep boy. Go for
Yeah.
it. Fucking do something weird. That's what I take from this poem. It's like, yeah, you get reminded that you can fucking do whatever the hell you want. You start writing like you know, especially with poems, because poems are so hard to like keep writing because you can't really write the same thing over and over again. You gotta like find juice, in with something like something new. But
Yes.
you forget that like you could just do whatever the fuck you want. You're like, oh, I gotta write a poem. Like I write a poem. And you kind of do, of course, but you could always take a left turn on a weird street and just fucking do whatever the fuck you want to, and take a chance, you know. And I don't think James, when like if we want to like theorize how he wrote this, I don't think he's. Who knows? This just feels like a pure stream of consciousness, lightning strike, of course, because it's so well written and good. But like he obviously has that freedom, and you know, for me anyway, it's like it's easy to forget that you have that kind of poetic freedom to go anywhere you want.
Oh, yes. It's a fun poem. It's also just fun, you know. It's fun to think about
I want
how
to also. I want to just clarify, like, well, I know it's exactly what you mean. It's just like the Black Art poem. It's completely fun. It's talking about some fucked up shit. That's not what's fun about it. That's what makes it interesting. That it's about fucked up shit, but it's fun, like, and how it's written. And you're like, yeah, when we
what
talk about having fun, oh, I could write a poem about, you know, the most dark shit ever. You know, like my brother dying, or just this shit that haunts me, or whatever. And you know, you tell somebody, oh, to have fun with like subject matter like that, and they like look at you. You know, students will do that. They'll look at you like you're fucking crazy, you know. But this is what we mean, like having fun writing it.
100%. Um, you know, I mean, I don't know. It always has to be fun, no matter how dark the subject
Yeah.
matter is. Which, speaking of, we can talk now, I guess, of you know, before we do that, let's talk a little bit about that turn. So, in Sheep Child, I am here speaking now from the voice of the sheep child himself. I'm here at my father's house. I, who am half of your world, came deeply to my mother in the long grass of the west pasture, where she stood like moonlight, listening for foxes. It was something like love from another world that seized her, and she gave from behind, and she gave, not lifting her head out of the dew, without ever looking her best self to that great need. Um,
Jesus. God.
you know, it's about
Goddamn awful.
yeah, it's about rape, and it's about being a child of rape also, and how weird that must be for some kids. Um, how much that knowledge would fuck you up if you knew it, you know. Um,
You might just tell a random stranger, hey, if you want to be beaten to a pulp, I'm your guy.
I mean,
uh,
it seems very possible that is one of the things that happened to James Dickey, that he maybe that's what he was told, that fucked him up so much. You know, you're a
that's
child of rape.
that might be the impetus to write this. Who knows, right?
Who knows? He wrote. I mean, for somebody who, you know, whatever. We don't know what his background was. He wrote about rape a lot, dude.
Well, did he
Uh,
write Deliverance? Holy
yeah,
shit.
and he was also the sheriff in the movie. Um, so yeah, he was instrumental in the making of that movie. Uh, and I don't know, you know, some things turn into lore, and one of the things that I choose to believe is that of the great writers of the South, Harry Crews, um, Flannery O'Connor, and James Dickey, and um, who's the other one? He wrote the Ball Turret Gunner. You know who I'm talking about, the poet. They washed me out
Oh,
with O.
Siegfried last Sassoon. That's not him though. You're thinking of the other guy.
The Ball Turret Gunner. Not Siegfried Sassoon.
Yeah, the other guy's on the tip of my tongue.
Whatever. I choose to believe that James Dickey's the most fucked up out of all of them.
It double. I
Um,
remember that. Um,
Um,
I guess so. I mean, I'm gonna start reading some of his stuff. I guess I pulled him
his
up on
poems, his poems are really fucking good, dude. Uh, I can't get through the novel of Deliverance. Um, maybe some other people can. I can't. But uh, the poetry is gorgeous. I feel like he was better at telling stories through poems.
yeah.
Um, it's a great, brilliant turn that happens. It's one of the things when I teach Volta, I teach this poem. You know, to my students, I'm like, this is what a fucking Volta is.
Yeah, when you're
You
talking
know,
about free verse, like it's so striking in this poem. It's pretty crazy. Like I said, it's just a fucking curveball out of nowhere. I mean, it's not out of nowhere. It makes perfect sense in the poem, you know? Like that's the thing that makes it work. It's not like, oh, it's a Volta, now it's a different poem. You know, like a lot of fucking contemporary poets nowadays, you pick up a book of poetry or poetry the magazine, and it's just like, fuck, man. What the fuck are you talking about? I get that a little bit with this poem. Like I said, it took me I'm kind of slow, so it took me a minute to figure this poem out, but it is actually pretty straightforward how it's written. The turn makes a lot of sense.
yeah. I don't know what I don't remember exactly what you said. I just think um, that your point was basically that it wasn't a personal poem and therefore therefore not good. I'm like, dude, it's so great though. Like, what are you talking about? You know, okay, maybe it'll never be, you know, um, my father speaks to me from the grave, but it's kind of using the same technique. Honestly, it's kind of just like
Yeah,
uh,
that's a little bit.
it's kind of just like you don't have to you don't have to write about anything other than what's going on in your head. You're just transferring that to the page. You're however crazy the idea is, you roll with it. You're never gonna know how good something is until you fucking until you until it's over. Sometimes they come like dreams. That's really how I feel. My father speaks to me from the dead came to Sharon Olds. And I feel like that's how Satan Says came to Sharon Olds too. I think they just dreamed these things and then they wrote them. At some point, we're going to read Yesterday Long Ago by this writer named Hanif. Um, it's a whole short story written about this guy who's talking to his father at a bar, and his father takes him home and gives him a massage. But his father's been dead for like 10 years,
That's
and
awesome.
it's fucking great, and it's so weird. Sometimes you just roll with these ideas as they come, um, and they don't have to be anything other than how they appear. Being a human being is just a weird thing, you know.
Yeah,
And for Christ's sakes, we elected Donald Trump, and then Joe Biden after that. Like, it's a weird fucking phenomenon to exist in this world where um where so much doesn't make sense.
yeah.
Uh,
And I don't think like this. Look, man, you can't. Have you ever tried to write a dream or a nightmare after it's happened?
oh yeah, it always comes out like shit for me.
Yeah, yeah. It sucks. It doesn't work because like you're kind of you're like imitating a thing that an experience that you just went through writing it. You aren't like re-experiencing it. I think that's the problem. I think when Sharon Olds wrote "My Father Speaks from the Dead" and a poem like this, where he's literally speaking as a fucking abomination, like they're just in a weird place. What did fucking Sharon Olds say when she wrote that? She said she was in Emily Dickinson's house, right? And
Yeah,
she
and
she she laid on the floor on the back and shimmied under the bed. So she's under the fucking
Yeah.
And she started writing this fucking poem, dude. So she's in like in a weird like subliminal place already.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you first wake up, you know, like if you can't catch it and you're still cognizant enough to write, but you're still kind of dreaming in a way. Like you could come up with some weird shit. Or on the other hand, you could be up for like 20 fucking hours, 24 hours, and kind of like half awake, and you have this like urge to write something, and you fucking go and do it, and you like live this weird little dream on the page. And it's rare. Like those poems are rare, and obviously it was rare for Sharon Olds because most of her shit isn't like that. Even though there are some weird poems like that. And James Dickey, I don't know if he wrote a lot like this, but I don't think you can really replicate a poem like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like that's and it's weird because you're like kind of catching lightning in a bottle because you can't force it. It has to come completely naturally. You know, you can't force it, obviously. Maybe with drugs you could try to make it work, but I don't think that's going to go too well for you. That's interesting, man. I don't know. Every poem that I write, though, like every poem that I write that turns out well, you have a little bit of that. It's not completely off the rails, like probably James Dickey was when he wrote this shit. But you kind of have to like let yourself. We talk about it all the time. You kind of have to let yourself kind of just spit spit fire. That's how I put it. Like, you know, a rapper would say spitting, spit fire, spit flames or whatever, but you're just kind of going with the subconscious and you're allowing your subconscious to go. I don't know. That's what makes writing so damn hard though, because you can't, it's like there's a weird balance to it. You gotta kind of push it and encourage it, but you can't force it.
Well,
Way up.
shit. Let's talk
Yeah,
about
man.
the last one.
Oh god.
Child beater. This one we can read in its completion. Outside the rain, pinafore of gray water dresses the town, and I stroke the leather belt as she sits in a rocking chair, holding a crushed paper cup to her lips. I yell at her, but she keeps rocking back, her eyes open forward, they close. By what she's talking about, she's rocking back, her eyes open
Mm-hmm.
forward, they close. Her body, somehow fat, though I feed her only once a day, reminds me of my own just after she was born. It's been 7 years, but I still can't forget how I felt, how heavy it feels to look at her. I lay the belt on the chair and get her dinner bowl. I hit the spoon against it, set it down, and watch her crawl to it, pausing after each forward thrust of the legs. And when she takes the first bite, I grab the belt and beat her across the back until her tears, beads of salt-filled glass falling, shatter on the floor. I move off, let her eat, while I get my dog's chain leash from the closet. I whirl it around my head. Oh, daughter, so far you've only had a taste of icing. Are you ready now for some cake? Man, what a fucking, what a brutal fucking nasty poem, huh?
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
another. I mean, this one is probably it's so damn like real. Like he's getting ahead of this person, this fucking terrible person.
well, um, I mean, what to even say about it except it's so vivid,
Hmm.
um, and it's so authoritative, and it's so to the point. Um, it's a very short poem. I think some poets are really, I mean, really all of them, and really maybe that's the lesson of this podcast today. Some people are obsessed with human evil. You know, I feel like these three poets definitely were. Whether that in fact they are, they both either of them were evil or any of them were evil or not. I don't think Amari Baraka was. I don't think AI was either. I think she was able to write from it without becoming it. But um, but man, she when she wrote from it, she fucking got there. You know, she got there fully.
Yeah,
I read a lot of her stuff actually.
I was gonna ask, like, how do you find her other stuff? Is it anything like this?
Um, sort of. She's another one that I gave. I feel like I gave you one of her poems a long time ago. Mary Galvin gave it to me first. It was like a 3-page poem. Um, almost felt like a short story about this girl writing in her diary. I'll have to see if I can find it. I'll have to
Okay.
read it again. But it's basically about this girl who finds out that she's pregnant and wants to give herself an abortion or something. Um, and I gave it to you, and you're like, "Yeah, this really doesn't do much for me as a reader." um, and then I gave you this poem, and I
I had a little
don't think
streak there of being a piece of shit.
yeah, I don't think. Well, the other poem wasn't as good as this, to be fair. So I accepted that criticism with that poem, but for me, it worked on some level, and I kept checking her out. Finally, I got one of her books um, for free, actually, at a when I was helping volunteer for the library, and this poem was in it. And somehow, one way down the line, I eventually found it, and I was just blown away. I was like, "Man, here's another one that I've never seen." Uh, I've never seen a poet write like this. I've never seen anybody write like this. Even like, so I read weird stuff. I like read serial killers manifestos, and I read the Columbine kids. I think it was Dylan's manifesto. Mostly just shit, honestly. What's his name? Albert Fish.
Hmm.
I read some of his letters. So he used to write letters to his victims' families. Really dark stuff about like go into graphic detail about how he killed their kids and
Ugh.
what he did with their bodies afterwards, how he consumed them and stuff. I read there's there is a serial killer named Pee Wee Gaskins who wrote an autobiography. It's really I mean, the whole book is really graphic. By the way, his life was a lot like how I imagine James Dickey's life. Just like his kids are exposed to sex at a young age and beaten on the regular, and they kind of pick up sex the way that they pick up anything, like a video game or anything, and you
Yeah.
know, raping each other and going around and raping other people is just something you do, in the South.
Fuck.
Just another way to pass time. Um, and just how bad juvenile detention was for him and how bad prison was for him. And
Yeah, I don't
all
understand.
this.
I don't understand the allure. That's kind of like the twisted allure that like Laura will have about hearing stories of people like getting killed and disappearing and abductions and shit like that. I'm like, I don't want to hear that shit. Like that's probably why I didn't like these fucking poems, man.
Yeah,
I can
that probably
appreciate
is.
I can appreciate this poem, the child beater poem, for the way the art of it, but at the same time, like it's not like what I'm gonna kind of go back to, all the time. Um, I don't know. I don't have like for whatever reason I don't have. I was gonna ask you like what draws you to that sort of shit, like especially when it's not necessarily art. It's just like an account.
Right.
It's like a
Right.
morbid. I kind of understand it, but I don't. I just don't have that kind of morbid like
No, you don't.
curiosity.
No, you don't. Well, in the case of this poem, it is art. But you're right. In the case of Pee Wee Gaskins' book, I don't particularly think it was uh, artful, quote unquote. So isn't a hard read. I don't know. I think that um, life sometimes, like, I see things in real life and I try to understand like why they happen. So this girl, for example, beautiful Russian girl, blonde hair, blue eyed, like supermodel, was caught on camera picking her 3-year-old up and just throwing him across the hallway. And then after the kid fell, she's kicking him off screen. She's just like fucking kicking him. And they arrest her. And the weirdest thing happened as I was watching, like the news cameras all were waiting for her to be finally released. And they just swarmed her. And they didn't, her and like 20 other women are walking out of jail, and the jail gives them like these big cardboard signs to cover their faces with, so that the news people can't see their faces as they're walking out. And so the only one that you really get a good glimpse of is a Russian, just because for whatever reason they've decided her her abuse is newsworthy, and the rest of them isn't. But I think on some level, like I watch that stuff and I want to understand how people could do that. You know, how could you do it, and how could somebody survive it? How could somebody endure that and grow up and be a functional member of society? You know,
Right.
which is really, I mean, that's the same thing that happened to Charles Manson. It's the same thing that happened to Mike Tyson. Honestly, you know, people like they look at their actions and they chastise them, but they don't really ever stop to try to understand the system, you know, that created them. And I think this is an answer to that question. Whence cometh evil? Here's where it comes from. You
Right.
know, somebody had to grow up like this. Um, Somebody had to grow up under these inhumane conditions. Uh, and to that end, it helps me understand my own life. You know, how could my father have punched a fucking, 12-year-old kid? How could he have kicked a fucking 12-year-old kid across the fucking house?
Right.
You know, when he's a
Yeah.
200-pound man, kicked him with fucking boots on. You know, how could he have brought, like, why would he have brought his fucking 18-year-old son to come work with him in a strip club? You know, I'm just trying to understand, like, parts of my own life that make no sense. How, not to bring up it's your business to bring up, but you've seen stuff like this too. How could my father have done that? How could my mom have done this? Um, when I was growing up,
See, the
and
difference is I don't look. The reason why the Sharon Olds poem is so like powerful to me is because she's trying to like figure out how her dad could love her, and in turn how she like still for some reason loves him, and trying to like
right,
figure that out by like digging on into the personal, like inside your head. Whereas like I think maybe you think a different way. You like look outward and like look at other forms of human evil in a way to understand, you know, what exactly it is. And I use evil as like, maybe a wrong term, but like just how humans can treat each other in evil and love and all of that, you know. Um, but yeah, I would never like, for some reason it just doesn't. Maybe I'm just fucking really narcissistic and selfish, but yeah, I don't like going out for it. But Laura, who also kind of is in a different, doesn't like, not necessarily the same like serial killer like site. Well, I guess maybe it is very similar actually. But Laura has another like her dad wasn't like super violent or whatever, but he had his own like brand of abuse. And while my
right,
dad like in moments was abusive, it wasn't like an everyday thing, you know what I mean? Like it was every once in a while, like sometimes shit would boil up and like our family went psycho for a day, and then we just went back to normal after that. but like for the kind of abuse you're describing is like a lifestyle. It's like an everyday like fear you live with.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference, and maybe it's shaped our tastes a little bit. But at the same time, I still really love dark shit, and I can appreciate the art in anything, just like anybody else. But I'm not like when I first read The Sheep Child, it's not speaking to me on the same way I think it speaks to you. Maybe for that reason. Black art though, like black art just fucking. I think if you're reading it, yeah, it's transcendent.
Yeah.
If you're reading at the right time in your life, you're trying to do art, you want to fucking read that poem, even if you disagree with everything he's saying, just because of how it's made. And
Yeah. Well, it's definitely the weirdest of the three, and there are three weird poems. But Black Art, Black Art might be one of my top fucking 10 favorite poems. It probably is. Um, I mean, it's like an inverse E. Cummings. I think funny we keep bringing him up, or I do, but it's almost like he's reinventing language as he's critiquing all these things, and as he's unleashing all this id, he's also reinventing language and making language work for him.
yeah, it's an interesting way to put it because it is like he's doing so many new, like it feels fresh. There's a reason why the way I described it was like the words are like sparking off each other. He's just like creating new combinations, that makes sense because it's how you think sometimes when you're in the state. Like if you've ever been like just enraged with life in the world, you know exactly what the fuck he's saying, even if he's not speaking to you. He's obviously not speaking to us, but we still understand every damn word of it.
It's funny, all three poems are also about rage. The one that's written the most calm, child beater, oddly enough.
It's the most vile, almost. Like it actually
it's
is the most vile.
It's also the
Which is, I
hardest
think,
one to read.
yeah, this one's tough. That one's just tough because it's like, I don't know, man. It's hard to like get over the subject matter in it. I don't know. I mean, I appreciate the way it's written for sure. It's just so plainly said, and there's like the line with the tears, blades of beads of salt-filled glass falling, shatter on the floor. Not just the metaphor, but like the way it's like kind of like choppy, and the way the syntax is like gives it maximum effect. Like little things like that. Like, and that's the thing you were kind of remember from the poem. Besides like the overall horror of it. But yeah, I mean, but you look at, so just compare the way that this poem is, and you read it, so like anybody's listening to this knows, but it's not as like, there's not as much energy in it as obviously Black Art, nothing has as much energy as that, but even the Sheep Child has this like this weird like kind of movement line to line.
You're kind of just like floating along, it's like you're caught in the breeze or something.
Voluptuous. I'll say it again. Voluptuous. I'm gonna smack myself if I ever say that again. Voluptuous. Yeah, just like
word.
I don't know, man. Maybe the Sheep Child just does it for me for some reason.
Yeah.
Fuck me.
Slowly becoming a Sheep Child fanboy, dude.
Dude, that last, I mean, not to like beat a dead horse, but the line when his mom is being raped by the boy, and then he was being born like in the summer sun of the hillside with my eyes far more than human, I saw for a blazing moment the great grassy world from both sides, man and beast in the round of their need, and the hill wind stirred in my wool. My hoof and my hand clasped each other, ate my one meal of milk, and died staring. Fuck, dude. I mean, an effortless way to write a scene, like, I don't know how you do that. Like, you just are dropped in it. And that's the way that poem's written. You're just kind of like dropped in his Dickey's head, you're dropped in his head, because it doesn't start even there. It's way more like it eases you into the and I think this is probably why you dislike most like persona poems, because it is like has a built-in insincerity to it. But with this poem, since that part comes in the second half, and the way it like moves before in the first half from like point to point, it's just like stream of consciousness. It's just in you're just dropped in James Dickey's head, and it's just completely sincere. Anyway, I don't know what my point was about comparing these poems, but like, I guess like I was just kind of comparing the language. So with Child Beater, I mean, obviously you can't really compare. It's an injustice to compare anything language wise, like the way it's written, to Sheep Child, because it's so well done. And of course, black art is an anomaly, like straight up and down. Like you can't tell someone to go write black art. It's impossible. You can't. Amiri Baraka is not going to ever be able to write that again. So
No.
he's probably dead.
Telling
So
somebody
I
to go
mean,
write hills like white elephants,
yeah,
Go
yeah.
write it.
It's a fucking anomaly. Like James Dickey, his style probably is similar, but what that poem is obviously the anomaly and what makes it great. Child Beater is just, it's also, but it also is very successful at like showing human evil, and like it's written from the abuser's perspective. So in a way that you don't empathize with them at all. You're just more revolted. Because
That's the thing. You're not supposed to empathize. There's no. I
yeah,
don't know if there is a way to make somebody empathize with this woman.
but that's also kind of like the contrivance of a lot of like persona poems or poems written from other perspectives, and even like evil perspectives. You're trying to understand, like, there's no hope in this poem, basically, which makes
there's
it
no
more sincere, because there shouldn't be hope in a situation like that for this person, or for the abuser. It shouldn't be, because fuck that person, So you ask like, why? What's the value in like this poem, besides the pure art of it? And I guess I don't know, like. I don't know why I don't know why I get hung up on that shit sometimes, but because art is art. Like if it's good, which this is, it stands on its own. That's the only thing it needs to do. It just needs to be beautiful as a piece of art.
I mean, listen, John. The reason these things exist is because, when you get successful in life, you remove yourself from that aspect of society where people are doing things like this.
Right.
You get shielded from it, and I mean, as we're shielded from the things going on in Palestine right now,
Yeah.
and I mean, more bombs dropped in 1 month than any entirety of our 20 years in Afghanistan, and in a space of 10 blocks, 10,000 civilians dead in a month. Like, we don't know what those words mean. They don't mean anything to us living here in America, but in other places in the world, they mean everything. And, like, go read this to somebody in Palestine, it's not going to do anything to them because they've lived through this shit. you know, they've lived through the bombs fucking dropping every fucking 10 minutes. Or whatever. They've lived through 75 years of apartheid and ethno cleansing. Like, that's not what scares them. What scares them is the actual fucking bombs. But you can't bring the bombs over here. So you bring the stories of this shit. Now the funny thing is that this could be happening in the house next to you, and you would never fucking know until the police kicked in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, And as somebody who's worked in the strip club business, in Florida, for 10 years, let me assure you, weird shit like this, sad, horrible shit like this is happening all over this fucking country. So you don't have to go all the way to Palestine to see this poem. This poem is happening everywhere on this planet. We live in a world where most people just don't deserve to be parents. a lot of people really shouldn't be parents, but they are. And and there's not enough checks and balances to make sure those kids are safe. I don't know if there ever will be. By the way, we're also living in a world where there's just more and more people every day, and the value of human labor is going down and down every day in the face of automation. Barack Obama was just talking about a UBI. Um, Tells you how mainstream that idea has gotten
That's wild.
since Andrew Yang coined it a couple of years ago. I mean, it is getting really bad, and abortion is becoming harder and harder. We're fighting, like I don't know. A lot of things set up that seem counterintuitive to themselves. And this is the fallout. The fallout is the kids, as they always are. It's like reading this and asking why does this exist is like reading Dostoevsky's The Beggar Boy of Christ's Christmas Tree. Why does that exist? It's like it exists because rich bourgeois motherfuckers don't care what happens to little kids, and they need to have it shoved in their fucking face. That's the point of art, is to shove
Fuck yeah.
is to shove not just this shit, but all of life, every spectrum of life, everything that's true in you has to be shown.
This poem is a reminder of why you write poetry or why you
Right.
create art in any form, really. And but especially to me, why I began writing. Like that's what it's about. It's like this shit's happening, man. It's happening right in front of your face. You just can't see it because you don't give a fuck enough to look to
I
open
mean,
your
John,
eyes.
someone could read a poem about Shane overdose and be like, why do I have to read this? Why should I have to read this? It's like, motherfucker, you have to read it because if not, nobody would care that my fucking brother died for nothing. That's the great irony. That's the great tragedy is if people running around this world like dying and nobody fucking cares, dude. Like the world just goes on without them like they never existed in the first place. And and I had to write this to keep from fucking robbing people like you. That's why it had to exist.
Yeah.
you know.
I don't really
Um
think about it that way when I write shit like that, though. It's weird. Like you don't, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think you do either. Like you write it because like you said, you just have to for whatever reason. Just have to. So
They do have to. Um I mean I do anyways. I have to fucking I have to try and understand why this thing happens to my brother. And I have to make his death mean something for my life to mean something because I couldn't convince him to stick around. I now have to tell his story since if I don't tell it, nobody will care. And I also have to do it because if that happens, if nobody cares, then I stop caring. And if I stop caring, then a lot of motherfuckers end up getting robbed while they're walking, to their car in a parking lot. um,
I think you just,
like
I think you just explained like a lot of fucking art.
yeah, Marilyn Manson
Or
said,
just human nature,
when he
really.
moved,
Like
he
if you
moved
don't
to
give a fuck
Florida.
about, sorry.
I mean, yeah, Marilyn Manson said it when he moved to Florida. He's like, I'm either going to become a musician or a serial killer. Um, Some shady ended. Marshall Mathers LP won with it's not a rapper that I make it as. I'll be a fucking rapist in a Jason mask. I mean, like we're doing this shit because the alternative is a lot worse for the rest of you. I don't know. We're not good at math. You know what I mean? We're not good at um finance, obviously.
Right.
We're
I was thinking about
fucking
the
DoorDash.
other like half of the population or the majority of the population down there. Like what are they,
I'm not
bankers and fuck?
really good at hard labor. I'm not good at um. I never work like I can never work at a bank. Like I feel like I'm just not pretentious and phony enough to survive fucking 9 to 5 in a regular job like my mother. I'm also just not ruthless enough like my father to survive in a strip club.
Yeah.
As a bouncer and a criminal. As somebody who's able to intimidate people.
All right, Craig.
All right.
Final thoughts. You got anything else to say about these poems?
I'm glad that down the line you changed. They got you. This podcast thing got you to change the way you feel about Sheep Child and the Child Beater. I knew if I forced you to read them, you'd appreciate them.
I always loved Black Art, you know.
Well, yeah, that one.
And goddamn, if I knew it was a fucking a final exam, maybe I would have read it again. You fucker! You should just said, "Hey, man, this is actually good. You idiot, read it."
Yeah, Black Art surpasses its the darkness of its subject matter. It's just that good. So we definitely need to talk about it. We got it out of the way. Anyways,
Yeah.
buddy, you choose what we read next time. All right, I gotta go.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right, buddy. Peace.
Bye.